batteries was hit in that area just the day before. The Russians claim that they have knocked out 15, according to their Ministry of Defense.
Ben Weed has been on the scene for us in the war zone. Thanks very much. Stay safe over there. Appreciate it very, very much. And to our viewers, thanks very much for watching. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. Erin Burnett out front starts right now.
Out front next, a deluge of evidence. That's what a member of the January 6th committee says it now has. This is the DOJ reportedly drops multiple subpoenas in its investigation into fake electors. Plus, a bad sign for Trump. Two candidates he endorsed were blown out in last night's primaries, as another candidate, Dr. Oz, erases mentions of Trump from his campaign website. Just how tight is Trump's grip on the GOP? And anger mounting as the families of Americans captured in Ukraine demand Biden do more. I'm going to talk to the fiancé of one of the Americans who's being held tonight. Let's go out front. Good evening. I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, ramping up. The Justice Department is ratcheting up its investigation into January 6th. According to the Washington Post tonight, federal agents issued subpoenas on people in at least 2 states, part of a growing probe into how Trump supporters tried to use fake electors to overturn the 2020 presidential election. At least one subpoena was delivered to the home of a Georgia lawyer who allegedly signed a document claiming to be a Trump elector, according to the Post. Of course, there were no Trump electors because he didn't win that state, but this was the fake elector scheme. Would-be Trump electors, we understand, in Michigan were also reportedly subpoenaed. So we're talking Georgia and Michigan right now. And you'll remember, we learned in yesterday's hearing that Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin allegedly tried to get a list of fake electors from his home state and from Michigan to Vice President Mike Pence just minutes before the joint session of Congress on January 6th. And that was being done so that Pence could use that slate of electors to say that Trump won those states and use that to overturn the election. Johnson today, however, was still dodging questions about it.
How much did you know about what your chief of staff was doing with the alternate slates of electors? No, you're not. I can see your phone. I can see your screen.
We got handed an envelope that was supposed to go to the vice president. I didn't know. So we called out the vice president. He didn't want it. We didn't deliver it.
Okay, Johnson with not much to say. But this is a man who, frankly, has had a lot to say when it came to pushing lies about the election. We're going to have much more on that and his role coming up. But the context here is that the January 6th Select Committee has obtained what one member of the committee calls that deluge of new evidence. And we're finding out that because of that, hearings are now going to continue into July because of the new evidence, right? Theoretically, this was all going to be ending in the next few days. But now, no, this is going to be continuing after congressional recess in July. According to Congressman Raskin, this deluge of evidence includes new documents from the National Archives, tips that have been flooding in. You know, you remember Chairman Benny Thompson keeps saying, if you know something, if you see something, call. Well, people have. It's flooded in. And in addition to that, apparently hours of raw footage from a documentary filmmaker who had access to Trump and his family in the days both before and after the insurrection itself. And tonight we have new images from that filmmaker. These are obtained by CBS, and you can see the access he had, interviewing both Ivanka Trump and then President Trump. The evidence presented so far at the hearings has impacted at least one moderate Republican, that is Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska, who tells our Manu Raju he's had enough of Trump.
When it comes to the primary, I will not be supporting him. I'll be looking for better candidates.
That's the bottom line, not supporting him, looking for better candidates. Well, Manu Raju is out front live on Capitol Hill. And Manu, look, you know, this is, I know it's been sort of in flux, the dates, the times, but it has been incredibly in flux as this now, you know, deluge of new information, as Congressman Raskin calls it, has come in. What are you learning about the committee's plans now?
Yeah, that's right. We had expected that the committee's hearings would wrap up next week, a couple more after tomorrow's hearing that will focus on pressure on Justice Department officials. But there has been new evidence, they say, that they are still sorting through. This British filmmaker, Alex Holder, who has provided the committee with footage, never before seen footage, including interviews that he conducted with Ivanka Trump, people in the Trump inner circle, Donald Trump himself, both at Mar-a-Lago as well as the White House. He is also participating behind closed doors electors talking to this committee tomorrow. Now, they've also put together a tips line, and tips have been, according to the committee, flooding in, and they're trying to track down whether those tips have any merit. And they're also getting new documents from the National Archives, all of which has led the committee to reassess exactly how it wants to present its evidence in the months ahead. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, the focus will be heavily on what Donald Trump did to try to pressure his Justice Department to lean on states in particular to change their electoral results, and how those Republican Justice Department officials stood up to the president. We're going to hear from Jeffrey Rosen, who was the former acting Attorney General, as well as Rich Donahue, who's the former acting Deputy Attorney General, and Stephen Engel, who's also a senior member of the Justice Department, all expected to testify. And Aaron, this all comes as the current Justice Department is pushing the committee to provide more information about all the witness interviews they've done, more than 1,000 witnesses. And Benny Thompson saying earlier today that they are beginning to do just that, and they plan to do more of that in July, even as the Justice Department wants it to move faster.
Manu, thank you. And I want to go now to Washington Post reporter Josh Dawsey. And Josh, you broke the story about the Justice Department issuing subpoenas related to the fake elector scheme. And I mentioned Georgia and Michigan. Obviously, you know, the big question is which states, how many people? I mean, what are you able to tell us about who received these subpoenas today?
So we know that a Trump campaign official who led election operations in Arizona received one of these subpoenas this morning. We also know a lawyer who served as an elector there. We also know officials in Michigan who worked on the issue there, putting together these fake electors, received subpoenas today. So we know in at least 3 different states where there have been activity. Based on what our reporting would indicate is that you could expect far more of these, that the Department of Justice is ratcheting up this probe and is looking at all of these various states. And there's dozens and dozens, I think more than 80 folks who served as these electors. I mean, you also have, you know, the Trump officials who orchestrated in each of these states. You have RNC officials who were involved. You had a whole, you know, smorgasbord of lawyers who were involved. So you could really see this investigation. I don't know how it will conclude. I think it's way too soon to know. Yeah. But you could certainly see, you know, north of 100 people being questioned by the end.
I mean, that's incredible. So north of 100 possibly by the end. So what does this tell you about where the Justice Department is, you know, the size and scope? And I guess as part of this, Josh, just to make sure I understand where your reporting is, has it been north of 100 people given subpoenas already, or sort of your feeling is it could head in that direction?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there were north of 100 people who could be involved in this totally. So I don't know that there's been that many subpoenas given already. I want to make that clear. We only have reported, you know, some already. But what we've seen is that this has continued to grow. And what we don't quite know is what all the Department of Justice is interested in. I mean, they've certainly shown interest in this. We know that a grand jury in Washington is also examining some of the fundraising behind, you know, the rally, and looking at the money that kind of came into the rally. And then there are lots of other places where the committee has, you know, publicly and privately, I think, expressed that they'd like to see more enthusiasm from the Department of Justice, and we just don't know. I mean, Merrick Garland has said repeatedly he will kind of only follow the facts where they lay, and that's actually gotten him a lot of criticism, I think, from the left, who wish that he would be more aggressive, or some criticism at least. But so far, there's been a lot of public breadcrumbs for us to see.
And Josh, do you know why now? I mean, obviously we're in the middle of the hearings, or somewhere in the process of the hearings going on with the January 6th committee. But all of a sudden, we're finding about these subpoenas as if the DOJ is sort of just getting, you know, in action. Now, that may be just that we're finding out about it, but yeah, go ahead.
I think we found out about some of these today because they were served today. I mean, our understanding is that a lot of these people got their subpoenas this morning. So it seems like that after looking at various components of this, they've gotten around to the point where they're subpoenaing a wider circle of net. I mean, if you look at how prosecutors often do these things, there's kind of some game theory involved. They kind of decide when to subpoena people based on other parts of the investigation, various things that are happening behind the scenes that we don't know. So I think we're finding out about this today because it happened recently, but I don't know precisely why that is.
All right. Well, Josh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Obviously important reporting, and thank you for joining me. I want to go now to Ellie Honig, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. Ellie, just to give some, analysis to Josh's reporting. So he's saying, obviously this could result in north of 100 people being involved, but their reporting is that, a handful of people served today. So it's not that they're finding out about it now, it's that it's literally happening now from the DOJ, as opposed to a month ago or 2 months ago or other times that this could have happened. All these people's names and roles are known to the DOJ. So why now?
Well, Aaron, it could be just a coincidence, but we can't ignore the fact that just yesterday we heard a presentation from the committee, a quite compelling presentation, laying out in detail how this fake elector scheme worked. Maybe DOJ is already there, but look, we got a pretty full and fulsome presentation yesterday from the committee that gave details, specifics, and it could be that DOJ is trying to catch up. Josh made a really important point. There is an element of game theory here as a prosecutor. You look at a large group like this and you think, where can we insert ourselves? Who's somebody on the inside who we might be able to flip, to turn into a cooperator so that we can build cases against other people? And ideally, as a prosecutor, you want to build up towards more powerful people.
Okay, so Josh pointing out that this could end up involving north of 100 people, but obviously that's not the number of subpoenas right now. Right now, they know of a handful. Right. But, if you're talking about fake electors and people involved in that quickly mushrooms, okay? So, Ellie, why are they subpoenaing these people? Are they key players or are they pawns on a broader chessboard?
Well, I think they're somewhere in the middle of those two things, Aaron. I think DOJ sees them as witnesses. It is longstanding DOJ policy. You do not subpoena somebody who you see as a target, meaning somebody who you believe you are likely to charge. You subpoena somebody who you see as a witness. What's changing now is DOJ has been looking at this elector scheme, according to public reporting, for a while, but they've been doing voluntary interviews with people who refuse to go along with it. What's changing now is, as Josh reported, these are people who were part of it on the inside. And I do want to note, Aaron, these subpoenas have real teeth. We've gotten used to these congressional subpoenas, which are just sort of brushed off with no consequence. When you get a DOJ subpoena, you can take the fifth, you can comply, or you can get locked up, and that's it.
So the committee, you point out, again, the timing, right? At least the way we see it. We understand things are served this morning. The hearing happened to have been yesterday. I'm just wondering whether you think the hearings are actually impacting the DOJ's speed and intent.
Well, we know DOJ is watching. Merrick Garland has said that, and that's a good thing. In an ideal world, normally DOJ is way out ahead of Congress. It is backwards to me. It's hard to understand how Congress could be so far ahead of where DOJ appears to be. Now, part of that is a credit to the committee. They've done a remarkable job. They found all sorts of really important and damning documents and interviews. On the other hand, DOJ has every institutional advantage in building a case. Like I just said, they have much more powerful subpoenas. DOJ can issue search warrants. Congress can't do that. DOJ can do wiretaps. Congress can't do that. DOJ can have the threat of jail time to flip people. Congress can't do that. So it's a sign that DOJ is making progress, Aaron, but to me, they're still leading from behind, and that's not ideal.
This is something obviously doesn't quite add up about all of that. All right, Ellie, thank you very much. And next, I'm going to speak to a member of the January 6th Select Committee, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren. She says the committee has received a, quote, mountain of new evidence. So what is it? Plus, Trump was front and center in Mehmet Oz's Republican primary. But now that Oz is in the general election, it appears he no longer, Trump seems to be erased. And Russia claims it's destroyed America's howitzers in Ukraine, as Ukraine may have endured its worst week on the battlefield since the fall of Mariupol.
We share this place, we all belong. Give it one
there is a kind of dichotomy between the real economy that we are witnessing, be it on the consumer behavior or the optimism of the CEOs or the board. And on the other hand, there is the stock market, which is in a free fall, at least for the tech companies, and also the noise that we are hearing regarding either recession, which is coming, or inflation which is going up. And there is this situation which is a little bit strange because there is no convergence between what we are hearing and what we are seeing in the market.
Try to be global and we try to be smart. And we try very hard to get both of those every week. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject, who will make you smarter, move you emotionally, who will kind of challenge your mind or move your heart. And that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
Tonight, members of the House January 6th committee taking additional security precautions amid heightened concerns over their safety. The nonprofit group Advanced Democracy found calls for violence against committee members on right-wing social media platforms. Users are openly calling for the execution of committee members, particularly Congresswoman Liz Cheney. Congressman Adam Kinzinger recently detailed a threat he received, saying they would, quote, execute him and his family. Out front now, a member of the January 6th committee, Democratic Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren. And Congresswoman, I appreciate your time. Unfortunately, I need to start with those threats of execution, particularly to Congresswoman Cheney and Congressman Kinzinger. Pretty horrifying. How concerned are you about your safety and that of your committee members?
Well, I did see the horrible letter that was sent to Adam's wife, threatening to kill her, him, and their 5-month-old baby. Really, I mean, how can you even conceive of such a thing? But I do think that, appropriate steps are being taken to keep everyone in the Capitol safe. I don't think it's necessarily in the best interest of safety to discuss the particular details of it, but I think all of us are certainly prepared to do the job that has been assigned to us.
So your chairman, Benny Thompson, said today that the committee will delay its next round of hearings into July. And I know the dates have sort of been changing, but we had, been told that it would sort of wrap up next week. And now that's changed, right? It's going into July till after recess. You have described the new evidence that's come in as a mountain. That's your word. Congressman Raskin used the word deluge to describe the new evidence. So is all of it relevant? I mean, what are you able to tell us about the new information that you have, Congresswoman?
Well, there's so much that we haven't had a chance to go through all of it. We do know some of it we've been fighting to get for a long time. Some of it is brand new, and we need to go through it. And that's going to be a major effort in the next several weeks. So it's important that we do this job well, and that means plowing through all of this evidence so that we can present what's relevant to the public as part of our effort to find and disclose the truth.
So Chairman Thompson says as part of this new evidence, he has reviewed some of that documentary footage of Trump and his family from before and after January 6th, from that British filmmaker. And, we have some photos, of the video that CBS obtained. So this is, Trump and the filmmaker, and that was one of the filmmaker did interview Trump, also interviewed his daughter and others. Thompson has called the video important. Are you able to shed any light on it, Congresswoman? Have you seen any of the footage yourself?
No, I have not had a chance to look at it today. I was too busy reading transcripts, but I'm sure I will see it in either today or tomorrow.
So let me ask you, in terms of the evidence that's come in, one thing I think stood out to so many of us was Chairman Thompson saying at the hearings, hey, if you know anything, call, sort of a hotline, call the FBI, right? And
Yeah.
It sort of stood out. It was a little unusual. I'm curious. I know you said you don't know everything that's in it, but, do you think there are gems in there of just, people who, because of that appeal to the public, actually gave you something crucial?
This is not the first time we've invited members of the public to come forward with information. We have right on our website, the tip line. And, some of them are not worthwhile, but some of them are. And we've been able to follow up and learn some things from things that members of the public have told us. So yes, it's been very helpful.
So in terms of that documentary footage itself, I'm just curious, how did you find out about this footage? And I mean, it's amazing nobody knew about it. And I understand that there were some senior members of the Trump administration who didn't even know about it. And I'm thinking, come on, how can that be? How did it even come to your attention?
Well, we're full of surprises, aren't we? I'll just say that we will roll out the relevant portions in an orderly way. And one of the things that we are being very careful is that obviously if you have a huge amount of video or even text message, you can't play them all in a 2-hour hearing, but we want to make sure that we're fairly presenting what we have found, and we will take every step to make sure that a fair representation of what is there is in fact presented. In the end, I think the chairman has indicated that almost everything that we have accumulated, with some small exceptions for, where there's a security issue with a witness, will be made available.
Congresswoman, obviously tomorrow's hearing, we understand, is going to focus on the DOJ and Trump's efforts to get the DOJ involved in his scheme to overturn the election. Chairman Thompson said that there will be conversations about pardons in tomorrow's hearing. What can you tell us?
That's right. Well, I'll let you watch the hearing. It starts at 3 p.m. Eastern time, but there is information about people who sought pardons. And, ordinarily innocent people don't seek pardons. So stay tuned for tomorrow.
Well, innocent people don't seek pardons ordinarily. I believe someone who has publicly agreed with you on that is the former president himself, speaking about pardons.
Correct.
Congresswoman
Correct.
Lofgren, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You bet. Take care.
You too. And next, Trump suffers 2 major blows in yesterday's primaries as a key supporter questions whether Trump has lost touch with his base. Is Trump support actually trying to slip, that strong base, any movement? Plus Ukraine possibly enduring its worst week since the fall of Mariupol. And tonight we'll take you to the front lines that Ukrainians are now calling a meat grinder.
Africa Avant-Garde in association with Access Bank. More than banking.
We need to start developing more writers. As a producer, I'm always on the lookout for new voices, new writers, because those are the foundations of good storytelling.
The best advice I've ever received is to never stop writing, because once you start practicing the thing that you want to get good at, you start having all those inflicting thoughts of, am I good enough?
To find your voice as a filmmaker or to tell stories that have deep impact, they have to be stories that affect you yourself. If it doesn't affect you, you can't translate that into a story. Whatever you write will be superficial. So first, if you're going to tell a story that is honest, it has to be honest to you first.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
What in the world is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Is this about being conservative or is it about control?
CNN investigates deep in the pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.
I am Nigerian by blood, British by birth, and American by residence. It is important to me that those same strands of inclusivity that flow through me are mirrored in the stories that we tell. One World is a place where Africa has an equal seat at the global table alongside Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Every continent has a voice, and where everyone watching has a stake in the global conversation.
One World with Zain Asher, tonight on CNN.
I'm Patrick Ottman in Havana, Cuba, and this is CNN.
Tonight, two big defeats for Trump in two key congressional primary runoffs in Georgia. Donald Trump's candidates of choice, Jake Evans and Vernon Jones, both lost, and it wasn't even close. These were blowouts, 33 and 49 percentage point margins. And in Pennsylvania, Trump-endorsed Mehmet Oz is now trying to distance himself, apparently, from Trump now that he's running in the general election. These pictures speak for themselves. On the left, Trump front and center on Oz's Twitter page before the primary. Now we're in the general. Something got erased out of there. Take a look anew at the picture on the right. No Donald Trump. Also missing that he was, quote, endorsed by Trump. But perhaps the biggest warning sign for Trump now is Amy Kramer, a co-founder of Women for Trump, a group that also helped organize the Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. Well, she tells Politico, in part, quote, Donald Trump is disconnected from the base. It's time for those of us in the movement to get back to basics, back to our first principles. We were here long before President Trump came along, and we're going to be here long afterward. Out front now, Erick Erickson, the leading conservative voice and expert on Georgia politics, also the host of The Erick Erickson Show, and Xochitl Hinojosa, former DNC communications director. Thanks so much to both of you. So, Erick, I want to start with what we saw in these primaries last night. And as I said, these were not just defeats for Trump. These were blowouts in terms of the primaries, these margins. Based on what you see, based on what you're hearing from your listeners, do you think Trump is disconnected from the base of the GOP?
Yeah, I very much do. Look, in Georgia, every single candidate that Donald Trump supported lost except for two, and those two would have won without Trump support. Herschel Walker, of course, with fame. Burt Jones, lieutenant governor nominee for the Republicans, who had a lot of money, outspent his opponent. President Trump, whether you look in what happened with Mo Brooks in Alabama, or you look at even his endorsement of Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, or what happened in Georgia, he seems to be focusing so much on 2020 and not the future, and a lot of his base is ready to move on. I think it's notable that NBC News, before the 2020 election, polled Republicans, are you with Trump or the GOP? And overwhelming majority said Trump. And now it's about 45% say that.
Well, that obviously is a big shift. So, Sochi, last night, there were 4 Republican candidates for New York governor in a debate, right? It was a Newsmax debate. They were asked a very simple question. The question was this: how would they describe themselves politically on a scale from Pence to Trump? And here's how they answered.
I don't know how to answer that. I'm a limited government conservative in all respects.
Giuliani. Trump and Giuliani.
No matter what the 2 names are that you mentioned, it's important to always be my own man.
I'm an Astorino conservative. I've proven that.
And of course, the person, Sochi, who said Trump and Giuliani is Giuliani's son. So what you saw there were the 3 other candidates not related to Rudy Giuliani refusing to use the word Trump. They would not call themselves a Trump Republican. They would not call themselves a Trump conservative. What does that tell you?
Well, they also didn't speak out against Trump. And you've seen the Republican Party, and it's been a Republican Party who refuses to speak out against Trump time and time again. I think the reality is that many in the Republican Party still seek Trump's approval, and they will continue to do that. But the reality is if you're going into a general election, you can't necessarily win by Trump by your side. And so I think the Republican Party is a Republican Party in crisis, because the reality is, as we look ahead towards 2024, is that Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. He put people within the RNC, within their membership, within these state parties, all across the country. And those are his loyal people, and he has a loyal base, and they understand that. And that's why they won't speak out against him. But at the same time, they also understand that he is toxic. And while the Republican Party wants to move away from him, he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, Eric, one person who it does not appear is now looking for the approval of Donald Trump is the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis. Reports that he isn't seeking does not want a Trump endorsement for re-election. And of course, anybody with even a passing interest in politics in America has run across a Ron DeSantis profile in the past 2 weeks. It's impossible to avoid the guy, right? He's everywhere. The storyline that he may be the one Republican able to beat Donald Trump. How real do you think this is, Eric?
Oh, and look, I think it's very real. This actually reminds me, just for students of history, if you go back to 1998 when Bill Clinton was president, the Republicans were looking at this guy down in Texas who was running for re-election. There were lots of major prominent contenders to be leader of the Republican Party. They started flirting with this governor down there named George Bush, who galvanized the field. And by 2000, everyone knew he was going to be the nominee. Ron DeSantis is starting to have that feel. I mean, when you look at it, Donald Trump had his pollster release a poll yesterday showing DeSantis losing to Charlie Crist. No poll shows this except for Trump's. That to me suggests even Trump is a little bit worried about this. And then today, a poll out of New Hampshire for the very first time shows Ron DeSantis in a race winning even with Donald Trump in the race. There's clear momentum for DeSantis right now.
So Sochi, you hear Eric compare the DeSantis buzz to George W. Bush before he won 2 terms in the White House. You got to think about some context. DeSantis is 36 years younger than Joe Biden. Right? And many in your own party have raised concerns about Biden's age. How concerned are you if DeSantis momentum is real and lasts and becomes the nominee versus Biden?
Well, I think the reality is he needs to get through a primary. And I think that you're going to have a very, very messy primary. I think people thought that Democrats were going to have a messy primary last time around. Well, Republicans will with this factor. So I'm not necessarily worried about it yet. And they're cut from the same cloth. They have the same record. They stand for the same things. And Democrats will define DeSantis in that way as they would Trump. I think that the Republican Party needs to figure out whether they're the party of Trump and DeSantis or whether they're the party of Larry Hogan and a more moderate. And if they decide to pick Trump and DeSantis, I think it's going to be very hard for them to win. Regardless, it will be a close race moving forward. Every presidential campaign is close, but the reality is that they do have records, and you will have a Democratic Party that tries to tie both Trump and DeSantis together.
All right. Thank you both so very much. I appreciate your time and your perspective.
Thank you.
All right, and next, a setback for Ukraine. Crucial U.S. military aid is said to have been destroyed as parts of the country are right now being pummeled by Putin's forces. This is a crucial moment in Ukraine. Plus, Russia claims it has no idea where the 2 Americans captured in Ukraine are being held. Does the fiancé of one of the men believe Putin at all? She's out front.
I'm Paulo Sandoval in Bogota, Colombia, and this
is CNN.
I was trafficked at the age of 18. I was a single young mom trying to figure out how to put myself through school. I was lured off of a college campus in Eugene, Oregon, and I was trafficked to Las Vegas mainly for nearly 6 years. My name's Rebecca Bender, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Rebecca Bender Initiative. The way that we mentor survivors of human trafficking is through our initiative called the Elevate Academy. Elevate Academy is really a holistic school that invites survivors to join a cohort of other people just like them. They get a mentor, they get a life coach. We help take them through a number of classes, some of which are really about deeper levels of healing. When I was able to finally escape from my trafficker, I can remember during that time I had been traded and sold between 3 different traffickers. I had 2 men tattoo their names on my back like a piece of cattle. I have been to jail multiple times. Had my face broken in 5 places. I was really hopeless and I didn't know how I was going to get out. Finally, a federal investigation led to my trafficker's arrest, and I went home to a family that was really supportive. But we know in this fight against trafficking that that's not the case for everybody. So not only am I really grateful, but I'm also really determined to help communities learn how to be that family for survivors that are trying to rebuild their lives.
Russia tonight claiming it has destroyed American howitzers in Ukraine. Officials saying the army used high-precision artillery strikes to blow up the howitzers that they say were made in the USA. These are weapons desperately needed as Ukraine attempts to turn the tide of the war. As the key city of Kharkiv braces for another major onslaught, Sam Kiley is out front on the ground.
Prayers on return to her bombed-out home.
I hope and believe with all my heart that light will conquer darkness, that peace will triumph over evil.
It's a distant prospect because here, Ukrainians say that Russian forces are massing for a new assault on their hometown. She fled the last Russian attacks in April when this area, Saltivka, bore the brunt. Thousands of people were driven from their homes in this northeastern suburb of Kharkiv Hundreds across the city were killed in missile strikes that did this kind of damage to whole apartment blocks. The remains of some of those missiles are still scattered in the rubble here, and it still smells of death. Kharkiv is under constant and intensified shelling, ending a lull after Russian forces were driven back several weeks ago. This college dorm was hit on a day when 15 people were killed in and around the city. On the front line, it's easy to see why Russia calls one of its rocket systems Grad. It means hail. Many Ukrainian fighters raise private funds to buy civilian drones. It spots a Russian soldier who hears the tiny aircraft and shows potentially fatal curiosity. Less than 100 yards sometimes separates the enemies on the outskirts of Kharkiv's north. Ukrainian forces call conventional trench warfare like this the meat grinder.
It's really helpful.
Lockie's been fighting in those same dugouts.
The main disadvantage, and everyone knows it, and it's the only one that I will tell, is the numbers, the raw numbers. There are just too many of the forces and stuff.
You can see the
Ukrainian intelligence officers' forecast for Kharkiv is a new threat of hail.
On this picture you actually can see well-hidden vehicles, and they are placing them almost on forests. We have firing positions of two self-propelled artillery and the fire and control unit right here. They actually tell us that they are going to prepare another invasion of Kharkiv.
Do you have an estimate of when that might happen?
I can't be 100% sure, but I am kind of confident, so in nearest week, I would say.
This is proving to be a long war. Prayer, often the last line of defense.
And Sam, obviously you're live in Kharkiv tonight. You know, talking to that soldier you were speaking to who was talking about just the disadvantage that he feels that they're at just in terms of raw numbers. You know, how is the Russian advance that they have been enduring over these past weeks impacting morale among Ukrainian forces as you see it?
Well, Erin, I've now been talking to a lot of foreign fighters inside the Ukrainian armed forces and Ukrainian soldiers themselves over the many weeks now I've been covering this war, and there is a distinct and obvious drop in morale. No matter how much you talk up and they talk up the success of Ukraine's defense of Kharkiv, the very successful defense of Kyiv, they are now openly talking, and even the government talking about casualties of 100 to 200 dead every day. That's effectively a NATO battle group taking off the battlefield, because that would also mean another 500 or so injured. Those are astronomical casualty figures, and they use this term the meat grinder because they are feeling that they are now being fixed in position, that the initiative is returning to the Russians. The Russians have the mass, which means that the Ukrainians are not getting the weapons that they need to change the momentum back to their advantage. Their advantage has always been move fast, strike quickly, and move away. If they get into a slugging match with the Russians, they know they could get ground down almost completely, Erin.
All right, Sam Kiley, thank you very much. Sobering, but important to hear that reality tonight. Thank you so much from Kharkiv tonight. And next, the State Department in touch with Russia about the 2 Americans captured in Ukraine. The fiancé of one of the men missing is next. What is she hearing from officials? Plus, Senator Ron Johnson in the middle of the alleged fake elector scheme to overturn the election. This is far from his first controversy. Just listen to Johnson railing against vaccines with conspiracy theories.
We've heard story after story. I mean, all these athletes dropping dead on the field, but we're supposed to ignore that.
Flytrex works with drones, which are basically robots. You don't have to pay salaries to robots. And that way we can take the cost, make it an order of magnitude more affordable than using humans for deliveries, especially in the suburbs where the population density is too low to optimize for multiple deliveries in the same run. We can basically offer a free delivery to our customers and charge a very small amount from the different restaurant chains and retailers. So it's basically a win-win situation for everybody, getting you your meal hotter, faster, and in a more affordable way. And we're already servicing almost 10,000 families in North Carolina, making deliveries 7 days a week, every day, to people's backyards during lunch, dinner. We send Tylenol in the afternoons, diapers in the evening, just servicing whatever people need in their homes.
Populations of wildlife need genetic diversity to be resilient, to be able to survive. You get that resilience and you get that genetic diversity by having mixing. You know, you have mixing of jaguars from the northern part of Belize with jaguars of the southern part of Belize. And that means that wildlife need to find their way through that tiny sliver of forest. Imagine you're getting squeezed on both sides, right? Your forest cover is going. In this particular case, it's mostly due to large-scale mechanized monocrop or agriculture that's taking place. We are here at the Cox Lagoon wetland, which is actually a very critical and important part of a 30,000-acre parcel of land that we have just purchased to protect in perpetuity for the people and government of Belize. Hope is the last thing to keep you standing. You know, when there is no hope, then that's it.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessments. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
Tonight, growing anger and distress from the families of American hostages being held abroad. 19 of those families demanding President Biden do more to bring their loved ones home. It comes after the State Department had to apologize after the U.S. Embassy in Moscow failed to connect Brittany Griner with her wife. That failure was due to a lack of staffing at the U.S. Embassy. Meanwhile, Alex Drueke and Andy Tynock-Quinn, who were fighting in Ukraine, training in Ukrainian forces, they say, are still being held tonight. Putin spokesman telling CNN he doesn't know where they are and saying that they are not protected by the Geneva Conventions. The State Department says it is in direct contact with Russia, which obviously is important and significant, but they say they're not getting answers. Well, we have been checking in almost daily with Andy Tynock-Quinn's fiancée, Joy Black, about these developments, and she's with me again tonight. And Joy, I appreciate your coming back on to talk about this publicly. I can only imagine how difficult this is for you, just wanting Andy to be safe and to come home. I do know you've been speaking with the State Department regularly. Did they have any news for you today?
We're still waiting on concrete evidence for them to get back to us. But when I spoke to him today, he told us that this is a top priority for the State Department and the government, and that they're working very hard on this every single day.
So Putin's spokesperson said to CNN that the Kremlin doesn't know where your fiancé is. And, you know, I spoke with Alex Druke's mom last night. I asked her about that, and here's what she said, Joy.
I would be very surprised
if Russia didn't know what was going on, because they indicate to the rest of the world that they're very powerful and that they know a whole lot, and especially if these are Russian surrogates that are doing their bidding over there in Ukraine so that they can annex all of that territory.
Joy, what do you think when the Kremlin says that they don't know where they are?
I think that it is very interesting of them to say that. I did hear them say that. And right now, I just have to put my faith in and trust in the process with our government. So that's what I'm doing to try and stay positive. But I do think that it was very interesting that they had that to say.
So today marks 2 weeks since you last spoke with Andy, and I know you got engaged just shortly before he left for Ukraine. Can you share a little bit more about him? You know, what made you fall in love with him, what kind of person he is, so people understand more the man that is missing?
Yeah, it's hard to condense him down into a short answer, but he's always been so full of love and compassion. Especially we have such a close bond, and he's always been so kind to me. Anytime that I would feel down or self-conscious, he would always bring me back up. He would tell me that my hobbies and I'm doing great at them. And whenever we would be getting ready to go out and I would be feeling bad about myself, he would always hug me and tell me that I'm beautiful to him. So he was always just the best, really. And I just want him back.
Well, Joy, hopefully he will be coming back and they will have news for you. I think we're all at least glad to know that the State Department is talking to you so regularly, giving you so many updates, telling you, have they given you, any sense of their conversations with the Russians or how they feel about those?
What I have been told is that they are in contact with them, although in terms of what they've been saying, I think the press conference that they had recently speaks a lot to it, especially him mentioning that they are protected by the Geneva Convention. And I think that the words from the Geneva Convention are very clear that they are protected by it as lawful combatants. So I think that's good that they made that clear.
Joy, thank you very much for coming on, for talking. And I hope that, I hope these updates are going to change. You're going to have good news about Andy. We all do. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, Senator Ron Johnson, a key backer of Trump's attempt to overturn the election. And this is not the first lie that the Republican has peddled.
What in the world is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Is this about being conservative, or is it about control?
CNN investigates deep in the pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.
Interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges,
Let's salute those going the extra mile, using their platforms for good. CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett, Sunday.
I'm Ben Wiedemann in Ukraine, and this is CNN.